am so excited. This is a really big week. So I wanted to say welcome to How to Set Confident Boundaries in 6 Steps, the ultimate course for people pleasers. And this is week 4 of our 7-week workshop. And it is really, in some ways, the pivotal week. This is the week that we will talk about your values. And your values are really what create the language for your boundaries. So it's big. So we're going to get to that in just a little bit. I do want to do just a little bit of a reminder and see if there are any questions. You know me, I'm your trainer, Julie Hawkins. And it's funny, when I create these slides, I actually change the goals every week because they're different every week. So we're going to spend a few minutes just doing a review of the 4 steps we've learned so far, the TAIL, the Tale of Taylor. And I can easily amuse myself. And so that's where we're going to start. That's what we're going to do to review today. But we're going to start with our overview of the workshop and our goals. So really, it's to stop feeling like a doormat. I don't feel like a doormat anymore, and I hope that you don't. But there are times that we have and we still do, and that's what this workshop is really about. It's to break the knee-jerk response of saying yes when you really want to say something else. Bella is going to join me on my lap here. So if you see a tail, that's Bella's. It is really, truly about unlearning all those negative knee-jerk responses that we learned so long ago and replacing them with new empowered responses. Yay to the new empowered responses. And of course, this is all about confidently setting your limits. And we do that through the implementation of the Taylor system for boundary setting. Yahoo! So we had homework this week. And, your homework is always, 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 always to remind yourself to be aware of your triggers, if not before they're happening, at least as they're happening, and say, oh, wow, I'm being triggered. What is triggering me? Is it a sound of a voice? Is it the language? Is it a memory? Is it the situation? Is it the person? So many things can trigger us, right? And then, of course, once you do that, then to be able to ask yourself, what's underneath that trigger? Am I angry? Am I frustrated? Am I disappointed? Am I overwhelmed? Am I hurt? What is really going on here? Okay. And those are going to be your continuous steps for the rest of your life. They have to be. That's what self-awareness is all about, right? And of course, to remember always to make note of any intuitive patterns that you may notice, and those come and go, right? Your intuition is always on, and you may not notice it taking place or supporting you or helping you unless you kind of ask, what's going on here? What do I feel intuitively? So it's simply just, it's there all the time. So just make note of it when you have that chance. And then last week, we also covered our language patterns and how we perceive information from others and language patterns, whether you're visual, auditory, kinesthetic, auditory, digital. And we're a combination of all of them, but we all have a primary way that we process information that comes into us. And of course, also as we express it. So we did discuss that, and I really want you to begin to think about you want to come back up? Okay, there's a tail. I really want you to begin to think about the language you use and hearing yourself when you use certain language. You know, years ago, and I love my student for doing this. Years and years ago when we were teaching an NLP class, I found myself using this phrase a lot, and you may know this phrase and hear this phrase, oh, I love you to death, or I love it to death. Well, we don't want to really love anything to death. We want to love it to pieces, to enjoyment. I love it to my heart. I love it, fill in the blank, anything but to death, right? And this was such an automatic response for me. And a student called me on it, and I said, wow, great noticing. Thank you so much for helping me to see that I was using that languaging and how it really doesn't support me. And I'll give you another one. And I admit I'm really guilty of this one. And it is when I am driving in the car. This is big for me. This is my big still work that I do. I can get frustrated easily with drivers. And sometimes I will say, you fill in the blank, so-and-so. And usually there can be a 4-letter word in there. And so I'm really working on that, instead of being angry at the person for cutting me off, to say, well, thank you. Thanks for that not signaling behavior that you just did and getting in front of me. Or I hope you don't do that to anybody else, or whatever. Because here's the thing. When you say this language, the other person can't hear. It's you, and your unconscious mind thinks you are speaking to it and about it. So this is the amazing part of how language forms our reality. Okay, so I really, really, really encourage you to be aware of your language and those phrases that you use so often that just maybe don't serve you. Okay, and here's another big one. As a people pleaser, oh boy, I used to say this phrase a lot. Somebody would do so, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I can't, take out the trash today. Oh, I'm sorry. Why am I sorry that you can't take out the trash? No. So watch for those patterns. There are ways to reword that. And here's another big one that people pleasers use. I'll try. And in the immortal words of that amazing philosopher Yoda, it is do or do not, there is no try. So I want you to be watching for those key language phrases that are kind of common for us people pleasers. Okay, come on, Belle, what would you like to do? You want to sit on my lap? You need to make a decision. Okay. Oh my God. All right. Looks like something's missing, but I don't know what. Oh, there it is. So the T in Taylor system, as we know, stands for triggered. So you're always, always, always being aware of your triggers. And then eventually you will be so in tune, if there's any left, because, once you resolve those triggers, they disappear. I want you to just be aware of them, and then to get to the point where you notice them right when they're about to happen, and you have a knee-jerk response for that. And that comes to the OR of Taylor system, which is our outcome and response. And we're going to get to that in the next couple of weeks to come after this, the next 2 sessions. So always being aware of your triggers. What is underneath is the issue. So T is trigger, A is aware, and acknowledgement, which we'll get to in next week. And I is the underlying issue, and intuition. And, what's going on with your intuition? Thank it for being there, because it will save your butt more times than you will realize. And the whole point of it is to realize that that's what it's doing, and to help it to work and to dance in a loving way with your ego that always thinks it's right. Okay? All right. And then just remember our rep systems. This was introduced last time, and we talked about rep systems, auditory, digital, visual, kinesthetic, and auditory, digital, as ways to more deeply communicate with others. Because when we can communicate in a way that they can receive it and hear it that makes sense to them, that's an auditory digital phrase, then they are going to be way more likely to want to assist you and cooperate with you and be truly on board with you and whatever boundaries you're going to set. Okay? All right. We also talked about expectations. Whoa, expectations, right? And to know that expectations are the foundation of boundaries. They just really are. And to be able to check those out when you think you've got it going on, you know, they're kind of funny, expectations. We know that their future beliefs, hopes, and desires. And you know what happens? So we're in a situation and all of a sudden our mind goes, oh yeah, I really want this to happen this way, but we aren't even aware that it's happening. So I really want you to become more aware that you're having these thoughts about expectations, okay? So much of this work hinges on self-awareness. And gee, it should be no surprise that all of our work really hinges on self-awareness, right? So the whole bit about expectations is really about becoming aware that you're having them and then saying to somebody, oh, what's your expectation about that? You know, you want me to clean the house. When do you want me to clean it? How much of it do you want cleaned? Can you please clarify what your thoughts and expectations are about that? And it can be done in a very simple, matter-of-fact way because that's really what it is. That's all it is, okay? And it's really just about suspending your own mind-reading thoughts and assumptions. And we do this by saying, what specifically do you want? How do you see this happening? Can you please clarify? All right. This is one of my favorite topics. So this is new information for this week. And we want to have this information as we begin to go deeper into this work of interacting and communicating and really having relationships with other people, because we're in relationship with a lot of different people. And when you become conscious of perceptions and perspectives and projections, there's a lot of work that goes into communicating and being in relationship with others. All right, so part of your homework was, of course, to read these chapters. And these chapters were about, this chapter was about perceptions, perspectives, and projections. So a perception is how we receive, process, and understand new information that comes into us from outside of ourselves. That was Bella. We can thank her for that. Yeah. Okay. And then a perspective is a viewpoint. A perspective we have is a viewpoint created on a subject or its parts. Really, it's your point of view, right? I have this point of view. I have this perspective. So visual. And yet it can be more than that, as we'll find out. So perception is bringing this information in, and you bring it in through all of your senses. Then you may form a perspective about it. Okay? And everyone, oh boy, everyone has a very unique perception and perspective about everything. So there's this phrase, oh, you're in your own little world, or it's your universe. And yes, it is, and they are, because You're the only one in your universe that has that perspective or perception. Now, there are general perspectives and perceptions about things. Like, I have the perception and perspective that the sun is always there. We may not see it, we may not experience its warmth, but we know it's always there. That's a general given, and it's a universal understanding. And so there are some of those. Those aren't the ones we're talking about. We're talking about the things like when you go see a movie with a friend, and your friend and you come out and you talk about a scene that evoked a certain emotion for you, and your friend said, well, I didn't get that at all. That's a perception and then a perspective. Okay. And then we have projections. Projections are, this was coined by Freud and expounded on by Jung. And okay, there, welcome. I'm just going to go ahead and mute you. We're off and running today, and we have a lot going on. Yeah, okay. Let's see if we can get back to our screen. So, so the new input for today is perceptions, perspectives, and projections. And let's go back here a little bit. We were talking about projections. So projections are things that happen in our lives that we internalize, that we can't necessarily deal with at the time, and we tuck them away and they go into our unconscious mind. And then we end up oftentimes acting them out in an effort to resolve them. And why they're called projections is because we project what's really going on unconsciously to be resolved onto somebody else. And so we may look at somebody and say, oh, you're just a terrible gossip, when in fact, maybe we're the ones who are doing the gossip, right? I don't know where that one came from, but it did. And in this day and age, our president is really a classic example of projections. He is, if you watch him, it's quite fascinating, really. He will say how somebody every day is doing something, and yet it's really, he is the person that is the owner of those things that he is accusing others of doing. And so he's really, if you watch him from that perspective, you will see him doing this throughout all of his interactions when he talks about other people and who they are and what they do and how they are bad at this or horrible at that, or it's fascinating to watch. Okay. Now, how does this help you? Well, this is where your triggers are identified. Okay. And when you, so they work kind of chicken or the egg, all right? We're not quite sure. Really, your perceptions and perspective, they help you with this to identify your projections, okay? Your projections are formed because you couldn't process something, right? And then we act them out by being triggered by somebody or something. So I love giving this example. So it used to be that my sister would say something, and it just would irritate me no end. And to be honest with you, I cannot even remember what it is now, because that trigger was something that was in me that I was doing. And when I noticed it and resolved it, the trigger disappeared. So for an example, she would either say something in a certain way, and it would just irritate me. And then I realized, am I doing that? I would really ask myself. So we go into that mode of asking, do I do that? And be honest. And if you are, then it's your trigger. And so that's how projections are so incredibly valuable. Now, there's another way you might ask yourself, am I doing that behavior? And then say, no, it's not me. And if that happens, you may become aware of it simply because it's something that you used to do and you no longer do it. So those are probably the two options that will come up for you. You're going to ask, oh, that trigger, oh, why is that happening? That is so irritating to me. Or I'm so frustrated when so-and-so does this, or I feel so overwhelmed. And then you have to ask yourself, when am I acting out that same behavior? Okay? Because I guarantee you, if you're being triggered by something, you've got to do something with that emotion. You're going to act it out in some way. And most likely, you're going to act it out in the same way to somebody else as you experienced it. So, for example, if someone steps on your boundary about something, you will in turn act it out and step on somebody else's boundary. Whoa! Like head explode, right? We're not even aware that we're doing this. And that's the beauty of a projection. So I want to just summarize this and say, when you are triggered, you're also going to begin to ask yourself, am I doing this behavior too? Why does it irritate me so much? Or why do I feel these feelings? Am I doing it? If it's yes, then you have to look at that behavior pattern that you are enacting. If it's no, then you may just be have resolved it and you are no longer acting it out. Okay? All right, let's open this up for questions, because this is kind of a big topic, and I want to see if there's questions about that. All right, so so questions about triggers, perceptions, perspective, projections.
May I ask a question?
Please, Dee, go right ahead.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So I just had an experience where I said to someone, oh, sorry, it came across like this to me. And she said, wow, that wasn't it at all. You're projecting. And I thought, is projecting include when someone does something that you wouldn't normally do, but you point it out to someone else?
It could. It could. And that's when you need to go inside and really have a heart-to-heart with yourself about it. And you trust yourself on that and say, am I doing this? Is that right? And this is where you need to trust your intuition. Because if your intuition is saying, no, she's just deflecting it back onto you, then it opens up for more conversation. And so you could say to her, oh, well, thanks. I'll take a look at that and maybe we can have a conversation about it. Oh. So do you want to get more specific, or do you feel like that answered your question?
Yeah, no, it was such a global perspective that you answered it. So thank you.
Good question. It's a really good question. So thank you for asking that.
Thank you.
Projections are a fascinating thing.
Right.
And I look at it this way. I don't want you to feel afraid of them. I don't want you to feel bad about them. It's information. Take it only as information. It is nothing else. Don't judge it. Don't do anything else with it. Just, oh, look, the sky is blue. That's information. Oh, this might be a projection. Okay, let's take a look at it, right? Okay.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, it's big, right? It is definitely big. All right. So we are going to, I know that,
Sure.
yeah. Do you
I
have a
have a
question?
question. Yeah. So, I mean, were you gonna go, like, were you gonna talk
No, that's
more
fine.
about,
If
okay,
there's still a question about this, go right ahead.
okay. So, I have a question about, I guess, perspectives of like, um, what is basically my question is, what is like my truth versus the truth? Like someone else's truth versus like, it kind of like, okay, this is what I felt, but in reality, it wasn't that way.
Well,
Does that make sense?
it does. And I want to get a little bit more specific, but I want to come back and say your truth is your truth. Somebody
Mm-hmm.
else's truth is their truth. Facts are different. Okay.
Okay.
So a fact may be the sky is blue. Well,
Right.
what shade it is may be your truth, and my truth may be a little bit different. We know that it's
Mm-hmm.
blue because of the atmosphere, right? Um, Maybe that's not the best one, but it could be any shade of blue ever. And how I see it as a blue green today, and you see it as a turquoise blue,
Mm-hmm.
those are perceptions, right?
Okay.
And then that perception causes you to have a perspective, which is your reality.
Okay.
Right? It's kind of out there craziness, right? That help you to understand and discern the difference between reality and um, perspectives. Did that answer that question?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
So are you saying, yes, like my truth or anyone's truth, their lived experience is their perception?
Exactly.
And then perspectives is,
Think of it as a flavor maybe of ice cream or a shade of something.
do you, is perspectives, because you were saying reality, like, and then you said facts, because it feels like perspectives is subjective.
Um, it is.
So it's not reality or
It can
facts?
be both.
Okay.
Facts are different from reality and truth. Sorry, let me come back here for a second. Wow, I have a whole lot of things going on here, don't I? let's try from this. Okay. Ask me that again now.
Okay, so I was asking if perspectives are subjective and
Yes. Let's stop with that.
okay.
Perspectives, all of this is subjective. Perceptions are subjective, perspectives are subjective, and projections are subjective. The
Okay.
only thing that we can agree on is a fact,
Mm-hmm.
right? And even that can be, seems like these days, subject to interpretation. But we have agreements. That's what I mean by a universal agreement or a universal projection about something. We agree that we call that big ball of fire in the sky our sun. And of course, it's known by many words in different cultures, right? But we all agree that's what it is and how it helps us and what it does for us. That's a general perception, perspective, and projection. It's not really a projection, but that's an understanding, and that's a fact. How we experience and perceive the sun is very subjective.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it's helping me understand.
Okay. So a perception and a perspective are your truth, your reality, and you may take that information and use them in projections and to help you identify triggers. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is there more to
Oh,
that? Go ahead.
what?
Is there more to that?
Yeah, maybe I'm getting hung up on like the facts thing. Like, where does that fit in? Because you were saying universal projections, but then you were also saying it. I don't.
Facts. All right. Oh, that's a great question, actually. Facts only matter when you have to make a logical decision about something. I mean, facts matter about a lot of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the work we're doing with perceptions, perspectives, and projections are really, they're the unconscious part of us that brings in this information that creates our reality.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, some of them are based on fact. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So all I really want you to think about is when you have a perception about something or even a perspective about something, that's fine. That's all well and dandy. What you do with it is what matters. Okay? We take in billions of pieces of information at any given moment. I mean, there's everything is in our purview of vision and sound and touch. Every little piece of paper, every leaf, everything is part of considered a bit of information that comes into us. We can't use all of it. We don't need to use all of it at one time. Okay? So we kind of disregard, for at least the time being, what we don't need. And then we make a decision moving forward based on the information that we have. That's where perceptions and perspectives come in. Okay? So let's now let those go for a moment. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
A projection is really what's important in dealing with triggers, because you've taken information over your lifetime, filed it away in your unconscious mind, and yet as a human who wants to evolve, you want to take that information and say, I don't want to be triggered anymore by this, so I need to understand how to work with it and deal with it. Now, you may not be saying this consciously. You may be saying, I just get triggered every time I'm with this person, and I don't want this to happen anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then we say, okay, so what's the trigger? It's, oh, so-and-so says this when I ask them to do that, all right? John gets in a bad mood when I ask him to take out the garbage. And then I get angry because I feel like I have to do everything and John's not cooperating. So how do I take that information and deal with it? If I'm using it as a projection, it might be that somebody asks you to do something and you're like, no, I'm not going to do that. Because now you've taken your frustration and you've projected it onto somebody else. And you're like, oh, no, I'm not doing that. So done doing that. It's just a random example, okay? Projections are acted out in a lot of different ways. And as I said earlier, looking at Trump, he will commonly accuse others of lying, of cheating, of stealing, of, when we suspect, and it has not been proven, that he is doing those things. Okay? So I don't want you to get too hung up on this, because we could get in the weeds with this, and I'm happy to get into the weeds about this anytime.
Mm-hmm.
But our time is limited, and I want to get to our values. So the top level of this is just know that you take an information. You may end up being frustrated or overwhelmed in a situation, and then you project it into another situation. And that's when you have to look at that situation and say, oh, I'm so frustrated when so and so does this. And then you go, oh, wait, do I do this? Where do I do this in my life? Okay, so that's the top level that I want you to have about these concepts. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
does that help?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
All right, great. So there we go. You can identify your triggers through recognizing your projections and vice versa. When you become self-aware that the trigger is really your unconscious mind saying, oh, I know you want to get rid of that, so I'm going to bring it up for you, then you get to resolve it. And when you've resolved this underlying issue and this projection, then your trigger disappears. And remember, I was telling you at the beginning of this topic that I had a trigger with my sister. And then when I went inside and looked at, why does that behavior irritate me so much? Oh, wait, I do that behavior. And when I worked on letting go and changing that behavior, then I no longer recognized it as something in her that irritated me. Your trigger disappears. So clearly, when you do the internal work for yourself, you create a happier, more harmonious world for yourself. Last bit of the homework that I wanted to talk about is when you become responsible for this work that you're doing, and of course, the only thing you can do is change yourself. And when you change yourself, you actually change the world around you, your perceptions, your perspectives, and your projections. And your triggers and feelings change. They really pretty much go away. So the takeaway from this is it doesn't help to blame somebody else. It helps to take responsibility about your feeling and your trigger and work on the resolution of those. Okay, that's true empowerment. And it's actually pretty awesome because you're the only one that can change you. You can't change anybody else. But when you change your perceptions, your perspectives, and projections and resolve a trigger, you've just taken more rocks or burdens or garbage out of that backpack on your back and lightened the load. And it's beautiful. And then you have even less boundaries that you have to set. So it's pretty amazing, really. All right. So what we did was, this was all about, triggers, awareness, the underlying issue, and a lot about language, because language creates your reality. And to go a little bit further in, when you perceive something, you make a perception about it by self-talk. That's language. Okay? Yeah, we're complicated. I'm just going to say that. We're really complicated. And all of those moving parts are so fascinating and so amazing that we can take them and put them together into just the most empowered and fulfilled human being. Okay? All right. Let's take a deep breath here, because that was a really big, full topic. And I want to talk about values. So values are the language of boundary setting. And we started that by using my 7 magic words. Okay? When you are a people pleaser and you want to start setting boundaries, it is not intuitive and second nature to say to somebody, John, I see that you didn't take out the garbage, in such a matter-of-fact way, because it's no longer a trigger. And I'm wondering why that didn't happen. And you know what, John, I don't really need a whole story about that. I'm just wondering, when are you going to take it out? Right? As people pleasers, we want to be able to say that, and we're not quite there yet. Okay? Because we get triggered and then we go into the feeling of the trigger. And so we need that stop gap language. And my 7 magic words are, I'd like to think about that. That is a stopgap measure. It stops us from being triggered and reacting. So then we can go into the logic and the matter of fact aspect. It's actually the outcome and response. Intent, just getting ahead here with outcome and response, the O and the R of the Taylor system, where we get to say, what's the outcome I really want from this? And how do I respond with it? Okay? And so language, as we know, is so, so important. And it's crucial to setting our boundaries. So boundaries are based, generally speaking, on our values. Okay? And there are kind of 2 types of values. We have core values and we have basic values. Core values are things like honesty and love and compassion and living your life from those places, right? From those perspectives. And so those are our core values, and they don't generally change. We might evolve them, we might grow them. They are kind of things that we're born with, although not always. Not everybody is born with compassion. Sometimes we have to learn how to develop that, okay? And we hope that everybody's comes from a place of honesty and integrity. Those are big main core values for most people. Basic values can change as you grow and evolve. For instance, my last corporate job, one of my core values was being in integrity and working for a corporation that I felt came from a place of integrity, core value, right? One of my basic values was feeling like I could be heard. And I got to a point in that job where, being often the only female in the room, I was no longer being heard. It's actually a core value for me as well. But I recognized it as a basic value too that seemed to be missing from my current job. Okay? So they're all important, and values are values. They're almost all generally unconscious. But as we come into this next exercise that we're going to do shortly, you're going to get a better understanding of what is a basic value and what are core values. And you'll find them in this exercise that we're going to do. They will both probably show up, okay? Boundaries are based on our values. And if we are not living our values, it's most likely that a boundary is being stepped on when it comes to a certain value, okay? So we're going to do an exercise. And before we do this exercise, I want you to get out, if you can, a pen and paper, pencil and paper, journal, whatever you want, a writing implement, no, that's not it, a writing utensil, and something to write on, because I'm going to ask you a question. And what I have found is that when somebody asks you this exercise is in the book, when somebody asks you this question, it allows your unconscious mind to bring this forward without you thinking about it. And that's what we want to have happen. Now, before we do this, there are several aspects of our life where values reside. And some of these values may be carried over. Actually, I don't want to do that. I think I want to share with you that there are, here we go. Let me say this to you. Here's the importance of knowing your values and be able to communicate them as a boundary if that's what you need to do. When you ignore your values, You give a part of yourself away. You give a part of your self-worth away. You devalue your worth in this world and in your own life. And that is disempowering. We will no longer do that. We are taking a pledge here and now to no longer do that. When you ignore your values, you can develop resentment, frustration, all kinds of feelings that you have that you may be projecting on others. When you ignore your values, you will recognize that you were feeling stressed out and overwhelmed. When you ignore your values, you are not setting your boundaries, and you may find it difficult to set your boundaries. Living within your values, according to your values, is vital to the life that you want to have and create. So this is why doing these values are so critically important. So there are 9 areas that I've identified where we can have values, okay? They're pretty general. What will be specific is your values, okay? Do we have 9 there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. How about that? So for our exercise here, I want you to pick an area to work on. And I want to give you some help with that, identifying that, okay? Would you like to help, Bella? All right. So if you feel like you're giving in to clients, to your boss, if you're discounting your value through and services through the value, the money that you charge for them, you might want to pick career and job. If you feel like you have relationships with certain members of your family or friends, then you might want to pick that area to elicit the values and to do this exercise that we're going to do. If you feel that there's a struggle with your family, with your significant other, or maybe you don't have that and you want that, and you want to identify what's really important so you can manifest it, then you might want to pick that category of significant other or romance. If you don't have that right now, it may be because you haven't identified the values and what's most important to you in that area. I think you are beginning to get the idea here. The same with fun and recreation. If you are work, maybe that's not a well-rounded life. And so identifying what fun and recreation means to you might help you to bring in more of that into your life so that you have a more balanced life, okay? Same with money or finances. If you feel like you struggle with keeping money, making money, then you might want to look at an exercise today of what's most important about money in your life or finances. Same with health, personal growth, spirituality, or your physical environment. You know, it's funny, when I was doing this list, I thought, if somebody is homeless right now, that would be a top segment or area of their life that they need to have some clarity on so that hopefully they can manifest a better home environment for themselves. So I'm going to just click out of this for a minute and ask if you all feel like you have an area that you can identify and do this exercise with. If only I could find it. If only I could find you guys. So odd when this happens. All right, so there you all are. I can see your faces. All right, so is this clear about the areas of life of your life and what area you're going to pick as I ask you the question for us to elicit values. And I'll give you a little bit more instruction about this when we get there in just a minute. I just want to make sure that everybody's clear on this. If you have a question about it, unmute yourself or raise your hand. Yes, great. Thank you, Claire. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Kelsey. And does everybody have something to write with and something to write on? I'm going to take that as a yes. And everybody, awesome. Yes, thumbs up is great too. Everybody's ready to go? All right, so just a little bit of instruction before we start this, okay? I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to take whatever comes up immediately. It might be a word, it might be a short phrase. Just at the end of this, you're going to start repeating. You're going to see that on your list you have repetitive information or very, very similar information. We'll talk about that when we're done with the exercise, okay? The goal here is for you to identify really your top 10 values, and then we're going to narrow it down from there, okay? So we're going to help you elicit about 10 keywords or phrases, okay, in this area of your life. And because I'm going to ask you all at the same time, the question I'm going to ask you is, when you think about this area of your life, what's most important to you? And I want you to remember what the area is that you're filling in the blank for, that I'm going to be not using because not everybody's going to be working on the same thing. So that's why I'm not going to say it. You're going to have to fill it in. So it's going to sound like this. Suppose I'm working on my health, okay? What's most important to you about your health? Okay, you're just going to fill in that area. If you're working on finances, you're going to hear me say, what's most important to you about, and you're going to fill in finances. If it's job or profession or career, you're going to fill in that, okay? So you're just going to fill it in mentally, okay? And then you're going to answer it. So for instance, I had a heart attack in 2019. And so when I ask myself, what's most important about my health? Eating a healthy, balanced diet. What's most important about my health? Getting some exercise regularly. When I think about health, what's most important to me about my health? Staying active. When I think about health, what's most important to me? Staying at an optimal weight. When I think about health, what's most important to me? Bringing in foods that are good for my body and don't clog up my arteries. I have stents. So, I hope this gives you an idea. Are there any questions about how you're going to answer this and the question I'm going to give to you? If you have a question, you can raise your hand or unmute yourself and ask. Otherwise, I'm excited we're going to do this. Okay, and then we're going to go over them. One last thing. It doesn't have to be long. It could be integrity, eating a healthy diet, clearing my finances, building a savings account. It can be that short. And when you leave this segment today, you're going to take that list and you may remember other things that you're going to add to it. Okay? So here's one last thing I want to give you about this. You're taking this course because you want to set boundaries. So I want you to pick a segment of your life, an area of your life where you struggle to set boundaries. If it is saying no to a client, your inability to say no to a client, please pick that area, business and profession, career, okay? If it's an area where you struggle to say no or set boundaries with your family, then pick that, okay? So I hope that's clear. Any questions?
Good.
Yeah. Yes, Dee, what's your question?
So I just made a list in just listening to you, and then we're going to do another list.
You can add to it. I want it to be I want you to get to a point where you find yourself repeating. Okay.
Okay.
So keep adding as you hear me ask the question again. And if you've already started, that's fine. That's great. All right, I'm going to ask it again. So we're going to keep going with this. So you're ready? You've got your topic. When you think about blank, what's most important to you? And I'll pause so you can write it down. When you think about blank, that aspect of your life, what's most important to you about it? This is not in the past and it is not in the future. It is in the here and now. When you think about what's most important to you about it. Do you have a question, Kelsey? Okay. When you think about what's most important to you about it. Now I'm going to come back and I'm just going to say it a little bit differently. What's most important to you about what's most important to you about your when you think about that area of your life, what's most important to you about it? When you think about that area of your life, what's most important to you about it? And I will be silent for a minute so you can just hear that in your head and keep repeating it. When you think about that area of your life, what's most important to you about it? I'm going to give you about one more minute. And just know that you can add to this list, and I want you to add to it or look at it later. So I'll give you another minute of silence. You can fill that in. And about 30 more seconds. And one more. When you think about that area of your life, what's most important to you? And make this your last entry. Okay, so I want you to come on back because I want to discuss this a little bit, and then I want to show you how it fits into boundary setting, because that's what we're here for. So, Dee, would you mind sharing your list with us?
Sure. The longer you give me, the longer it gets. I'm on page 2.
Yes, it absolutely will. However, so go ahead and give it to me.
So what's most important to me about career? Most importantly, it's freedom. I choose when I work, what I do, and what I'm worth. Should I keep going?
Keep going.
Peace, so that no matter how chaotic it gets, I'm zen at work and I'm enjoying the time there. Respect that I'm a professional. Appreciation of my efforts. Joy in doing good work. Integrity of self and clients. A team that supports me, that I can delegate, get passive income, and help with sales. Laughter, let's have fun at work. And heart connection, the spiritual mind, body, soul, where we inspire each other and it actually makes the work fulfilling.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Perfect. So here's your homework for later. We're not going to do it just yet. It's to take this list and add to it if things occur to you over the next week. Some of this list may change and evolve. You may come back and recognize that you have additional values, but they're kind of worded similarly. And so you want to decide which one is most appropriate to the sentiment that you are trying to identify, okay? So that you end up with a list really of your top 5. Because at any one given time, we're really working on about a top 3. But for the sake of, let's say, your job and career, you may interact with your top 5 at any given day. Okay, it could be more, it could be less.
Okay.
Now, here's where it shows up as a boundary. What was your first one, Dee?
Freedom.
And what was your second one?
Peace.
And the third one?
Respect.
Okay, and the fourth one?
Appreciation.
Okay. When you discount a bill, which one of those is getting stepped on?
Respect. Move her on up to the top, shall we? Okay.
All right. And so here's how, I'm going to put it out there, but I don't expect you to repeat this yet because it will come together a little bit more next week and a little bit more on the week after that and the week after that. When somebody asks you to discount a bill, here's an option of a boundary and how you might say it. So one of the things you're going to do is acknowledge them. And this is what we're going to talk about that and more next week. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Joan, I really appreciate you asking that.
Mm-hmm.
Joan, I feel that my services are already really well priced, and it would not feel right to me to discount them anymore. So I hope you're going to understand and respect my decision. Thank you for asking. And, we can work out a payment plan if that might be helpful.
I like that.
So here's the other key to that. You want to try to offer them. So I'm going to get rid of that word try. You want to offer them a compromise or another option that they might be able to work with.
Okay.
So I understand, Joan, that, a discount for you would be great. Sure, I get that. I make a living too, Joan. So I know you'll appreciate and understand and respect the fact that I've done my very best in this work and given you this bill as a reflection of that. However, if it makes it easier for you, we can set up a payment plan. What do you think about that?
Okay. Like it.
Yeah. So doesn't that feel better than, oh, sure, I can give you $50 off and then you can get this, right? Doesn't that feel so much better?
So much better.
So much better. And oh, by the way, it's really so much more than no. It's so much more than saying no, right? No is the concept.
Right.
But it's so much more than saying no. Okay. So I want to give each of you the same opportunity so that you have an understanding of why your values are so important. Does this make sense to you, Dee?
Totally.
Okay. And when we disregard them, as I said in that slide before, I'm just going to go back because it's such a valuable slide to take a look at. Here it is. This is what happens when we ignore our boundaries, and our boundaries, as you know, are based on our values. You ignore it, you devalue yourself, you resent others, you feel stressed out or overwhelmed, you blah, 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 fill in the blank, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Dee, for being a willing participant of that. All right. Teresa, can I come to you?
Sorry, I have a meeting in 1 minute and I have to log off.
Okay. All right. Did you get a list?
I do have a list, yes.
Did you get the concept?
I did, yes.
Perfect. So we'll come back and talk about that next time. And thanks for setting that boundary.
Thank you, Julie.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. So Ocean, can we talk to you for a little bit about this?
Yeah,
How did that go for you?
it was good.
All right. Do you want to share what area it was for you? And then
It was my career.
okay, great.
So, I mean, do you just want me to like read the entire list or just like pick the 4 things that you were saying?
How long is your list?
I mean, it's pretty long, but like,
Let's go to the top.
I know like how to group them. Like they have similar, you know. So,
Yeah. Give me like
yeah,
the
I'll just,
10 or so.
what?
Let's do the top 10 or so.
Okay, great. So it's security, which means a lot of money, and I want to be able to pay off my debt and save money. Freedom, okay, I'm just gonna read off my list since that'll probably be easier. So it's security, lots of money, enables me to support my family, enables me to give my partner a sabbatical on his work, pay off debt, save money for my family and parents, allows me to do my own passion projects on the side, allows me to live the life I want, easy, manageable work, competent in the job. I get along with the people I'm working with. My coworkers and managers are kind people and competent in their own job. Freedom to do my own thing, have a flexible schedule, something I believe in or support, and having my career as something that is a supportive thing in my life,
Okay, so I'm hearing
basically to support my goals.
a little bit of repetition.
Mhm.
And that's perfect. That's actually fine, because what I want you to both to do, or all to do, when you hear this, is to go back and ask yourself that question again if you feel like there's something missing. If you feel like, oh, this doesn't quite make it in my top 10 list,
Mm-hmm.
scratch it out, please. And take that and then make a priority list of these. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you. They're all important. They're all number one, right? And they will move around as you move around in your life and your career or the area of life that you're working on. Because as you achieve freedom, financial security, respect, whatever it is, when you achieve that, then that can kind of move down the list a little bit. It'll always be there because it's a top 5 value. And where it comes in setting a boundary then is at this point, if I may, because you're looking for a new job at this point, it's to keep this list in mind, right? It's setting the boundary and being able to say, it's a hard and fast boundary for me that it has to be a certain amount of money. It's a hard and fast boundary for me that I need to have flexibility. It may be negotiable about how I achieve flexibility. Maybe I have to show up once a month in person for a meeting, but the rest of the time I can work at home. You see how we're identifying a little bit deeper here?
Yeah.
And that way you can then set a boundary and explain that to somebody during an interview by saying, wow, this meets almost all of my criteria. However, my biggest priority is that I work from home, and this is not allowing me to do that. Is there any flexibility in that? So remember, setting a boundary is also negotiating. And so knowing what your boundaries are, then you can negotiate from there. Doesn't mean you won't give up on something or negotiate if 95% of it is there. You might say, look, 95% is pretty darn good. And I will learn how to work with the other 5% because it's a growth area for me. Nothing is perfect. If it's perfect, you're dead. And that isn't the case. And we don't want that to be the case. So is this clear about how important your values are and how you get to learn how to develop the language in setting boundaries? I'm going to open it up because I kind of want to have a discussion about that, because the bottom line is this is going to be ongoing. It's going to be ongoing work for you. It will never be hard and fast, right? I want you both to, if you can unmute yourselves, so that we can just have a little bit of a conversation about this. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Perfect. And do you understand where sort of the language comes from to set the boundary? I think you do, but I don't want to read any minds, and I don't want to put my expectations on anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dee, does that make sense to you?
Sorry, were you talking to me?
I was. I was just saying, does this make sense to you, how you create your language, where the language comes from? It comes directly from your values and how you feel about them. And
Totally.
And truthfully, when you identify this, you're just speaking your truth to somebody.
Yeah.
It's powerful. And there's no anger, frustration, resentment. There's no negative feelings about it.
It feels good.
It's a matter of fact. It's a matter of being able to say to somebody, wow, I certainly appreciate you asking that, because we always want to acknowledge somebody. Oh, preview of next week, right? And yet we don't want to mind read for anybody, right? Mm-hmm. We want to be clear about what their expectations are and yours are. And then we go right to our values and identify them. And we put them first and foremost up on your computer screen, up on your refrigerator, up on your office door, wherever you're going to see them when you're talking with clients, where you're seeing family, if you need to put them on your phone, so that you're always being reminded, wow, it's really important to me that this happens during our interaction. It's really important to me that I feel respected about the work that I do. And I know you do, or you wouldn't come to me. And so while I respect your request, I politely decline. And yet we can do this instead. So so here's my pet peeve, and then we're gonna wrap it up, and I'll give you the homework. So I give to charities, and I'm really, really sensitive to the homeless situation, especially now during a pandemic, which is going to get worse. We're going to see more homeless than we've probably ever seen or have seen in to date. And yet when I walk into a store, as I'm walking into a store and somebody asks me, do you have money? Or I'm on the side of the road and they don't knock on my window, but they hold up their sign. There are times I'm willing to give some money, and there are times I say, oh, no, thank you. That way I don't feel bad about saying no to them, and I feel polite in that response. Does that make sense? And even when somebody doesn't ask, like they come to the door and they, well, nobody really comes. Yeah, people come to my door a lot, I guess. If I don't want to do something, I just say, oh, thanks for asking. No, thank you. Or, if they want a contribution, no, thank you. It's polite, it's clear, and it makes me feel good about the response I give. So just a thought about that. All right, any last questions before I get to the homework? We've gone through this. Keep working on your list and prioritize it 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 through 10, and then your top 5, so that you are clear and that you work to be in alignment with them all the time. When we are in alignment with our values, we're living our highest, best possible life. It's amazing. It's just amazing. So remember that your core values don't generally change, although they might. And then it's your basic values that we're working on for these 9 areas of your life. And you can go back and do this exercise for other areas as you desire to do that. Maybe it's spirituality or personal growth or relationship, whatever. Go back and do them. It's an eye-opener. You'll see which ones are consistently the same throughout, which ones are a little bit different, and how you can manifest exactly what you want, okay? All right, so as we know, we're always identifying our triggers and creating awareness about the underlying condition, okay, or the underlying issue. Continue to tap into your intuitive patterns and your intuition. When you are in your living your values, that is when your intuition is most clear. Okay, so pay attention to it and where you feel it, because it feels good and you want to make note of that. Just keep noticing your language patterns, anything that you say like I'll try or I'm sorry, and continue to add to your list or create new lists of values if that's something that you would like to do. I think it's a great thing to do. Read chapter 14 on acknowledgement, the other A. So awareness, as we all know. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and just come back and ask you if there are any last questions before we close it for the day. I feel, did everybody enjoy that? Was that helpful? Eye-opener? Did it really? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
It's great, right? It's so simple and yet so just such an eye-opener for everything. And it will help you to drive how you live your life. And oh, by the way, that you deserve it and you have permission to live this way and to live in your values. You always have permission to live your values. You always have permission to set boundaries. I cannot say that enough, so you'll hear me say that. Any last questions before we end for this workshop? I want to thank you all. I love this work, and I love asking that and connecting with the values. And I look forward to hearing more about it later. Any last questions or thoughts? We're good? All right. I love you. Big hugs. Keep doing this work. And any questions, post them in Facebook. All right. Be well. Bye-bye.
Bye.